Check it out, Startup Nation. I know many of you are trying to improve your marketing performance, right? You have your business or your e-commerce store and you're trying to increase that brand awareness. No worries, I got you. You should listen to the brand new Keep Optimizing podcast. That's optimizing with an S and not a Z. It's a marketing podcast that will provide you with not only the latest tips and advice in the game, but also you will hear from experts in their field when it comes to email marketing, SEO, and more. This is a must-listen-to podcast for my e-commerce entrepreneurs. It's hosted by Chloe Thomas, who is a 15-year marketing expert, best-selling author, and award-winning podcast host. It's already a top 20 marketing podcast in 7 countries. So clearly, you're going to get amazing value every episode. So as you can see, Startup Nation, you're in good hands with my girl CT. So listen and subscribe to the Keep Optimizing podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you like to get your favorite podcast. You can also get more information at keepoptimizing.com. The link is there in the show notes.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation, so I hope you're ready to receive some value today. My name is Dominic Lawson, and this is The Startup Life, the show for entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals. You know, Startup Nation, when following a dream, we often find ourselves in adverse situations. Meetings not going your way, sales numbers not where you want them to go. The list goes on, right? And it is at these times that all you can really do, is hold on to the passion until things turn around. And our guest today knows a little bit about that. She is a graduate at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. She's also the founder of Sweet Sweet Honey Hawaii, which is available online and in all Nordstrom stores. She is the wonderful Jennifer Teixeira. J-Tex, how are you, ma'am?
I'm awesome. How are you doing?
I can't complain. Look, you know, you have this amazing career, this amazing experience. Are you ready to pour some knowledge into Startup Nation today? Because we can definitely use your help.
Yes, absolutely. I am ready.
Sounds good. So if you would first, just kind of share your origin story, if you don't mind.
Well, I started off very young as an entrepreneur, always loving fashion, watching fashion shows, redoing my Barbie's clothes, always wanting to be a part of fashion. And then later on in life, I noticed textile prints and how fabulous that was, especially being in Hawaii with all the tropical prints, all of the tropical designs around me, and just wanting to really get into the fashion industry.
Gotcha.
But before that, my parents was entrepreneurs themselves, especially my father.
Gotcha.
He was a fisherman. He loved to fish, so he would go and sell his fish at the fish market. He also had little businesses here and there. He had like a shave ice, so you guys call it snow cone.
Yeah.
Truck. Back in the day when it was like a food truck, but it was more like a snack food truck. So he had various things going on as well that got me interested in starting my own business at a very young age.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. You know, tell me a little bit more about, some of those things you learned from your dad. He sounds like quite the hustler. So tell me a little bit more about him.
Yes. My dad was an immigrant from the Philippines.
Okay.
And he moved here, I want to say, when he was about 20 years old.
Gotcha.
And he wanted to live that American dream of just, back then it was hard for him finding a job and working endless jobs. And he pretty much did it, to make more money for the family.
For sure.
And I watched him pretty much hustle on a daily basis, working 2 jobs, handling a family, and also doing his little side hustle. And that really got me intrigued of the way he worked every single day. And I really love that hustle.
For sure.
It was exciting to me.
Absolutely. No, yes. I definitely can understand that. And we've had people on the show where either they're first generation or second generation Americans and stuff like that. And it just kind of goes to show that like immigrants are like make some of the best entrepreneurs. It's almost kind of like, they want to go somewhere, whether it be the United States or anywhere else for that matter. You go somewhere, you really don't know much about the lay of the land, and you're just like, you know what? It just has to work. There's no other way for it to happen. It just has to work. So I just love that story that you tell about your dad. I appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely.
For sure, for sure. Once again, Startup Nation, we're talking to Jennifer Teixeira, the founder of Sweet Sweet Honey Hawaii. So that is quite the name. Kind of talk to me about that a little bit.
Yes. Okay. So I did not know I was going to start a children's brand. I always knew I wanted a company. And it kind of just fell upon me, kind of just happened, so to say. I wanted to start a company, or not start a company, but I just wanted to design stuff for my kids.
Gotcha.
And it just grew from there. And I didn't honestly know what to name it. And because I just had a newborn, I would call her my Sweet Honey. And I was like, why not just call my brand Sweet Honey? So I had another child, a little older daughter. She's now 12.
Gotcha.
And she'd be my honey. So I'd be like, oh, that's sweet. And that's sweet. And that's my honey.
Gotcha.
It wasn't really, my business wasn't really planned. It kind of just like fell upon me.
Gotcha. Well, let me ask you this though. Kind of talk about why just go ahead and pursue it. It wasn't really planned. It just kind of, was, I'm not going to say thrust upon you, but it was just kind of just fell in your lap a little bit. And there's times where entrepreneurs was like, they get those notions to either, I don't know, or, I'm going to go forward with it. And you could have gone either way. So what was that tipping point?
Yes.
What was that tipping point in your story?
Yes. So I was shopping for kids stuff one day at Nordstrom.
Gotcha.
It's so funny because now we're in Nordstrom.
That's hilarious. Yeah, absolutely.
And I was walking around and I was like, there's nothing really that intrigues me here. It's so, not to say boring, but it wasn't really my style.
Right.
So I was like, let me just, being a graphic artist and being in the fashion industry already, I was like, let me make something for my kids that they could wear that was vibrant and soft and lightweight fabric, being in Hawaii. And so I created some pieces for my kids. I hand sewed them all. And when my daughter was born, I took some pictures and everyone just loved it.
Right.
And everybody wanted to order it. And I was like, okay, let me just make a few pieces here and there. And it just grew from there. It's word spread. And I was like, wow, I'm really onto something here. Let me continue on to see what's going to happen. Because at that point I had a full-time job. My husband works a really good job. And it's like, well, what's to lose at this point? Gotcha. And from there, I started my business with $300.
I hear that.
And I just started flipping it over and over and over again until it became what it is today.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing. Yes. And Startup Nation, that website is sweetsweethoneyhawaii.com. We have a link there in the show notes. Yes. If you're listening to the replay there on the podcast. And when you go to the website, you really check out these designs. What you notice instantly is that like they're colorful, they're vibrant, and it really speaks to the nature of what you would think of when it comes to Hawaii. Kind of talk about how the state of Hawaii really does, inspire the brand. Not just from the namesake, but from the materials and stuff that you use as well.
Yes. Hawaii is very full of culture. Absolutely. Everyone here loves their heritage. And we're very, very proud of what we represent here in Hawaii. And that's the spirit of aloha and sharing that aloha, which means love to everyone around us.
Right.
And that's what our company stands for. We want our print to speak to the world. And it's just not for people who are in Hawaii, but for people all over the world, and just spreading that love. Our fabrics is lightweight. So we do our bamboo muslin fabric, which we started off with our swaddles. And then we have like a very soft, light and airy cotton fabric, which is great, not only for Hawaii, but for summer as well in the U.S. mainland.
Gotcha. Now I have to ask because, I saw that, with everything going on, the global pandemic and stuff like that, in the June of this year, you had $70,000 generated in revenue. Like, that's fantastic. I guess I want to ask you, how have you been faring? Obviously pretty well, but like, what do you think was the keys to your success during this economic kind of downturn a little bit, if you will, because not everybody's having that success.
Yes. So in the beginning of this pandemic, I heard about it in January when it just started, and I was terrified. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to pay attention to what's going on in the world. I'm going to keep going. Yes, we had major setbacks and challenges with production and just getting supplies, like shipping supplies and all of everything, the delays with shipping. But I refused to give in and be like, well, I'm going to stop production. I'm going to hold off. I'm going to like stop advertising. I talked to my team and I talked to everyone that's in the business with us. And I was like, we are not stopping. We're going to continue on as nothing is going on. And we are going to have some challenges. And I think that's what everyone who's our supporters on social media and everyone that supports us saw, is that we still wanted to continue on, and we're still putting out that love to everyone that, hey, even though this is going on, we're still here and we're still here for you guys.
For sure. You know what?
As a company.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I appreciate that. And when you talk to your team about that, and you're trying to rally the troops and stuff like that, let me ask you this. Let's get a little deep real quick. How much of that, we're not going to panic, we're not going to do this, we're not going to give in. How much of that was not only for your team, but also for yourself as well?
It was definitely for myself.
Okay. For sure.
Yes, it was.
For sure.
It was, because I battled with cancer before, and I try to always see the positive side out of everything.
Right.
The way I see it is, if we don't make money, or if, we have to shut down, that's like the absolute worst that could happen. It's not the end of the world.
Right.
Like I said in the beginning, I started my company with $300. Worst comes to worst, I can start another company with $300, and I had that mentality of just keep going on. And I do have to, remind myself every day of what I've been through while starting this company, and just hype myself up and the people around me to know that, they're not going to lose their job. We're going to try to do this as a team, and we're going to be successful at it. And that's really worked out for us during this COVID.
Right, for sure. And
19 issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I appreciate that. And I was going to ask you about your past and coming on the other side of cancer. And it seems like it's really prepared you for these adverse situations, like a pandemic, or even if like revenue falling, or supply chain issues that you kind of mentioned earlier and stuff like that. Cause I know in the 48 states over here, there's a lot of people going through that. Let me ask you, was it like doubly hard to kind of figure out? Because not only is it regular supply chain issues, due to the pandemic, but was it like an added layer of difficulty being in Hawaii?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Talk about
we
that
were short
bit.
on supplies. Yes. Shipping was on an island. You can't get a lot of shipping supplies.
Right.
You can't get the fabric that you need. Like I get everything sourced out of Hawaii. Majority, I want to say 75% of everything is sourced out of Hawaii, just because shipping is so expensive. Supplies is so expensive here. It just doesn't help my business out at all. So we did have so much delays. We would have to send notifications to our customers that we were shipping late because we couldn't get mailers, or we were out of shipping labels. It was something so simple that you'd never think you'd be out of. And we were going through those issues, and people would be like, well, why don't you have mailers? It's like, well, I can't get it.
Right, for sure.
There was tons of product delays as well. Our collection release got pushed back months in advance. Because we had manufacturing delays coming from overseas as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Were you finished? I didn't want to cut you off. Go ahead. Were you finished?
No. Go ahead.
Okay,
no,
gotcha.
go ahead.
Okay, gotcha. No, I wanted to ask you that, and that's really important, because I can't tell you how many times we talk to people who email the show, or we other entrepreneurs we talk to in our many endeavors and stuff like this. Like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go on an island and start a company, and everything's gonna be fine. And so you have Jennifer here. It's like, well, there's some things you may want to consider. Before you kind of do that. So I'm glad you said that, because that's super important. Because we have, like I said, we have so many people, whether it be Hawaii or somewhere else. It's like, I'm just going to go on an island. I'm going to be a beach bum and just start a company with a laptop and a dream. And it's like, well, like I said, I think it's more to it than that. So I appreciate you kind of filling in those blanks for us, because I think that's important.
Yes. It's definitely more expensive, I feel, because I lived in California for about 5 years. It's definitely more expensive to own a business in Hawaii than it would be in the States.
Right.
That's yes.
For sure. For sure. Thank you for sharing that. And speaking of California, kind of talk about your time at FDIM a little bit.
Yes. I majored in graphic design. I didn't go into full fashion just because I was inspiring to be a graphic artist versus a fashion artist. I wanted to actually get into movies instead of fashion. But I'd work with a few designers at FIDM, and that's where it led me to go into fashion instead of movies.
Gotcha.
So I went to FIDM and I got a job at a manufacturing company in downtown LA. And I just loved the whole aspect of the whole manufacturing industry.
Gotcha. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, and then I got a job at Forever 21 working in that massive environment. And that's where my dreams began. Like I wanted a company just like that, where it's very homey. They were loving towards their employees at the time. And I just love that environment and wanted to eventually create something on that size scale. I mean, we're not there yet, but eventually.
Gotcha. Well, it looks like you're definitely on your way, and I'm glad you talked about your experience, at Forever 21 and stuff like that, because we have a lot of people who are thinking about that path of entrepreneurship, and they're afraid. They're like, I don't know. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. But I think, because I imagine being there in LA, you was in, probably, in and out of the LA fashion district. And then some of the stuff you learned at Forever 21, also obviously at school as well. I think what you point out is that like a lot of the skills and tools that you will use and need in entrepreneurship, you may come into the business mind. I mean, you may come into your company with 70% of that stuff you already kind of know.
Yes, actually, I do suggest everyone that I meet, they ask me for advice, and I do tell them, get into the industry that you want to get into. Like, go ahead and work there.
Right.
And see if you actually like that industry before you try to jump into it. Because a lot of people start at, I don't know where to go. I don't know how to do this. They're lost at how to start. And like, well, go and get experience in that industry. Even if it's in retail, just getting to know customers.
Right.
You can learn so much by just talking to people and meeting people, and that will help you get further.
All right, Startup Nation. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life. Check it out, Startup Nation. I know many of you are trying to improve your marketing performance, right? You have your business or your e-commerce store and you're trying to increase that brand awareness. No worries, I got you. You should listen to the brand new Keep Optimizing podcast. That's optimizing with an S and not a Z. It's a marketing podcast that will provide you with not only the latest tips and advice in the game, but also you will hear from experts in their field when it comes to email marketing, SEO, and more. This is a must-listen to podcast for my e-commerce entrepreneurs. It's hosted by Chloe Thomas, who is a 15-year marketing expert, best-selling author, and award-winning podcast host. It's already a top 20 marketing podcast in 7 countries. So clearly, you're going to get amazing value every episode. So as you can see, Startup Nation, you're in good hands with my girl CT. So listen and subscribe to the Keep Optimizing podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you like to get your favorite podcast. You can also get more information at keepoptimizing.com. The link is there in the show notes. Oralex powers this episode of The Startup Life. Startup Nation, as a podcaster, radio host, and business owner, I know a thing or two about the need for your message to come through clearly to your target audience. The last thing you want when trying to close a big deal over the phone or giving a sales presentation in your conference room is to have the person you are talking to be distracted by either the fact that you sound like you're in a warehouse or an outside noise like a fire truck. Trust me, Startup Nation, I know this all too well from experience. And that is why Auralex has your back. Auralex Acoustics creates professionally tested products that you can trust in a commercial space or at home. Better office acoustics improves intelligibility when video conferencing or generic conversation, reduces stress, and helps build a proactive work atmosphere. From a home studio for my content creators to your office space downtown, your gear performs better in an acoustically treated room. Trust me, you are in good hands with Auralex, as they are the #1 brand in acoustics, providing trusted solutions for over 40 years. Also, you can download the Auralex Acoustic Treatment mobile app in the Apple or Google Play Store to give you specifically designed and instantaneous recommendations for various room types. Go to Auralex.com and use the promo code STARTUP in all caps for 10% off your entire order. The link is there in the show notes if you are listening to the replay on the podcast. So if you are ready to stop sounding like you're having a sales meeting in a sports arena, go with Auralex. Professional audio made simple. Tresta powers this episode of The Startup Life. Okay, Startup Nation, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Tresta. Tresta is an app for iPhone and Android that lets you do business calling and texting from anywhere. I know so many entrepreneurs that are still using their personal phone number for business calls. It can get complicated drawing the line between your personal and professional life. Startup Nation, this is the best business phone app out there. Whether you just need a business phone number or if your team is ready for a complete business phone system, Tresta is totally flexible and can grow with your business. And it's all unlimited calling, texting, and all of the powerful call management features like auto attendance, call recording, user groups, and more for just $15 per user per month. With Tresta, there's no contract, and you don't need any special hardware, just your smartphone you're already using. Tresta is easy to configure, so you can set everything up yourself, all online, avoiding all the hassle and high overhead costs of setting up a traditional business phone system, which is important because as entrepreneurs, we are always trying to cut cost and time. They're offering a 30-day free trial so you can see if Tresta's virtual phone system is right for you. Communicate smarter and more efficiently with Tresta. Start now at Tresta.com/startuplife. That's TRESTA.com/startuplife. The link is there in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast. Tresta, business communication simplified. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life. So, you were talking earlier about the spirit of Hawaii and sharing and aloha and stuff like that. And I know that your brand has a social component as well, where you're like planting trees or and other stuff like that. Talk about why that's important for you, because we're seeing a lot more brands, a lot more businesses that are being started in the past, 5 to 10 years. Having that social component. Matter of fact, we a few weeks ago we talked to Dr. Christopher Marquise. He's a professor at Cornell, and he's all about B corporations where they have that social component, and it's growing more and more. Talk about why that's important for you to have that social component to make the world a better place when it comes to your company.
Yeah, so it starts with my heart and what I believe in,
Gotcha.
And that's for our children right now. So it had nothing to do with profits or, try to gain exposure in any sorts of that.
Right.
It had mainly to do with me selling children stuff and thinking about the future for our children and wanting to be involved and being that example for not only my children, but children and mothers everywhere who are following us, to let them know, hey, this is what's going on in the world and we need to be able to do our part. So when you support our company, just know that we are supporting all of these causes as much as we can with what you're providing us with.
For sure.
So it's not just, we're just not one of those companies trying to gain profit from other people's money. We actually want to do a difference in the world. So we set out with planting trees. Mm-hmm. We give back to the communities and the hospitals here. We try to give back as much as possible. Gotcha.
Let me ask you this, because when we think of, Hawaii, if you've never been there, you don't live there, something like that. Excuse me. What are some of those social challenges that you talked about planting trees and stuff like that. What are some of those other social challenges that you try to tackle as you use the platform of your business to kind of tackle those things?
Yeah. So we have a lot of homeless right now going on in Hawaii.
So you wouldn't even think that not visiting there or something like that. You wouldn't even think that. But I'm sorry, I mean to go ahead. I wanted to emphasize that point. Go ahead.
Yes. You don't think about homeless in Hawaii. You think it's very beautiful.
Right.
Hawaii's a very, very expensive place to live in. And in the recent years, prices have skyrocketed. Even though we're in a pandemic, it's still happening. Prices are not coming down. It's still going up. Right. So we have a lot of homeless, and we also have a lot of homeless families as well. It's just not, abuse or drugs or any of that.
Gotcha.
It's ordinary people who are losing their houses and having nowhere to go. So we try to give back to that as well, especially we got word of the hospitals and parents not being able to clothe their newborn babies. So we do work with the hospitals as well with that.
Gotcha.
We have a lot of injustice going on here in Hawaii as well with the land and not being able to afford, or the local people being able to afford places here because it's being sold to international corporations. So it's just a lot of injustice here as well. Yeah.
Gotcha. No, I didn't know about that part. Can you share a little bit about that part a little bit if you don't mind? Just a little bit deeper. Yeah.
So, the Hawaiians have lived here forever, you know that, and they believe that the land was stolen by the United States.
Gotcha.
And the tricky part about that is the state does not give the land back to the people versus they have deals with international corporations to take over sectors of the land to maybe build hotels or to build their housing and pretty much raise the price on the locals. Right. So local people are having trouble buying houses and, affording their rents in real estate. And that's why it's so hard to own a business here because the real estate is just insane to even afford something on that.
I believe it. I definitely believe that. No, I appreciate that. And I think it just goes to, thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask you
no problem.
And dive deeper into that because I think as entrepreneurs, it's one thing to make a profit. It's one thing to be altruistic, but it's also another thing to pay attention to the socioeconomic situation that's going on around you because, a lot of times now, granted, you are a national brand, you sell online and stuff like that, but you're based in Hawaii. And so, you not necessarily have an obligation or whatever, but you have to know what's going on around you because just for the sheer, being in the sheer vicinity of, those things like homelessness and the land and real estate and stuff like that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
No problem. Absolutely.
No worries. So one of the things that, that has come up a lot in this conversation, outside of, they being the namesake of your company, which is once again, Startup Nation, sweetsweethoney.com. We have a link there, sweetsweethoneyhawaii.com. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to the replay on the podcast. But you mentioned your kids a lot and they seem super important to you. I know you got to go get them in a little while, but kind of talk about your kids a little bit.
Yeah. So I have 3 daughters.
Okay. I bet that's a fun household.
6 and 5. It's a fun household running a business and, trying to educate my children about what's going on in the world and raising my children to be the leaders pretty much of the future, which I think is very, very important, especially in a time like this. So it is very tricky as a parent in 2020.
Gotcha. No, I imagine. Yeah, absolutely. We're virtual schooling ourselves here.
Yes, exactly.
So I definitely understand and appreciate what you're talking about. So as the mom of 3 girls and having this business and, during a world pandemic and stuff like that, what are you hoping that they're learning from you? What do you hope their legacy will be as they move on and they get older and they kind of come into their own and with their maturation process? What are some of those lessons you hope they learn from you?
I hope that they're watching me. And I know my second and my oldest one, they really are inspired by me. And I can tell by their actions and what they say they want to do. And they always try to help out in the business. They're always involved in the business. But I hope that they see that no matter what happens, you can always conquer your dreams, and you can face your challenges, and challenges aren't that scary. They are just challenges in life that's meant to be overcame.
Right.
And they just really become those strong women that the world needs.
For sure.
Because we do need strong women going into the future.
Absolutely. No, I definitely understand that. As the father of two daughters, I definitely agree with that sentiment for sure. Jennifer, what's your entrepreneur superpower and why?
Ooh, superpower.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I definitely have to say I like a good challenge. I think I do love challenges. I feel like it keeps me alive. Mm-hmm. It's not as much as the success story. It's more of the journey that it takes to get there.
Right.
So I think that's kind of like my superpower, if that makes sense.
No, that makes complete sense. Let me ask a follow-up question to that, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs who, they like challenges and stuff like that. But sometimes, some entrepreneurs that I've seen can get a bit addicted to challenges. Like you always want to push yourself, always want to challenge yourself. How do you balance not taking unnecessary challenges or unnecessary risk? You know what I mean? Because you can be like, oh yeah, I can overcome that. Let's see how strong I am now. Right. And you can find yourself in trouble sometimes by doing it. So kind of talk about that balance a little bit, if you don't mind, Jennifer.
Okay, so I like to make a list of pros and cons and plan it out. I try to foresee the future before I even take the jump. So that's my balance in taking challenges on. I kind of know what's going to happen before it happens, or I make a list of what could go wrong before I even approach it.
Gotcha.
And if that list is way too long, if it's too much, I won't go and push myself then and there yet.
Gotcha. You know what? I'm so glad you said that, because when I say stuff like that, people think you're being crazy, Dominic, like, as far as like, you can't tell the future. Like, okay, look, I'm not fully prescient. I understand that, but I believe that if you make pros and cons lists, like you talked about, Jennifer, but also if you're paying attention to everything around you, kind of telling what's going to happen next is not as hard as you think. So I definitely understand that, and I appreciate you saying that for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
No worries. And before I ask the last question, Jennifer, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your time. And once again, Startup Nation, that company is sweetsweethoneyhawaii.com. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to the replay on the podcast. Also follow them on Instagram at the same name, Sweet Sweet Honey Hawaii, and go and check out the fantastic post and content there as well. I'm actually going to turn the microphone over to you, because there's somebody out there in Startup Nation who's feeling a little discouraged, feeling a little down. Jennifer, if you would give us some words of encouragement to take us out for the day, if you don't mind.
You are amazing, and you can do amazing things. Start off small. Don't let anything else discourage you. Don't let anyone else discourage you around you. Take one step at a time and believe in yourself, and take that jump if you are ready.
Take that jump if you are ready. Thank you so much. Awesome stuff. And that's going to wrap up our time here on The Startup Life. We want to thank Jennifer Teixeira once again of sweetsweethoneyhawaii.com for coming on the show. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
No worries. And as always, Startup Nation, if you have an idea, be about that life, the Startup Life. If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show, as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new startup blog, where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, Be about that life, the startup life.